They told me my workshop was an embarrassment. My own wife said it out loud at a dinner party, laughing like it was a joke everyone in the room was already in on. 22 years of my life poured into that space, and to her it was a punchline between the salad course and dessert. I didn't say anything back to Diane that night. I just refilled everyone's wine, smiled the way you smile when you've gotten good at swallowing things, and went out to the garage after the guests left, alone, like always. But before I tell you the rest of this, I want you to understand something. This isn't a story about a machine. It isn't even really about the money, not at its core. It's a story about who stands next to you when everyone else has already quietly decided you're finished, and about how long it can take for that truth to come due. I live outside Tyler, Texas, in a modest brick house I bought back when I still had a pension plan that meant something and a union card that actually protected you. I worked 26 years as a machinist before the plant closed its doors for good and shipped half its equipment overseas. After that, I built things in my garage because it was the only place left where my hands still felt useful. An irrigation valve design I'd been refining since my 30s, something I sketched on a napkin one slow Tuesday shift and never really put down again. Diane called it my hobby, said it the way you'd describe a man who collects bottle caps. My son Marcus called it Dad's junk, and he usually said it within earshot, usually with a laugh attached, like it cost him nothing. Marcus is 34 now, sells commercial insurance downtown, drives a car worth more than my truck and my entire workshop combined. He stopped visiting much after I lost the plant job. Told me once, half joking, half not, that watching me tinker in a garage instead of getting a real job again was hard to explain to his friends at the country club. My daughter Renee is different. 29 years old, teaches middle school science 2 towns over, drives out most Sundays with a bag of groceries she pretends she just happened to have extra of. She's the one who used to sit with me on the nights I couldn't sleep, asking real questions about the corrosion problem I was chasing, actually wanting to understand the chemistry of it instead of just waiting for me to stop talking. If you've ever been the one everyone quietly wrote off at the family table, stay with me, because this story is about to turn hard. And if you want to see exactly where it turns, go ahead and hit subscribe right now, because you are not going to want to miss where this one lands. The valve design solved a corrosion problem that had cost agricultural irrigation companies millions of dollars a year for decades, a problem most engineers just accepted as the cost of doing business. I filed the patent myself back in 2003, barely able to afford the filing fees on a machinist's salary, eating the cost out of what should have been that year's Christmas budget. And then I did something Diane never fully forgave me for. I signed the patent into an irrevocable trust in Renee's name alone. Not because I loved her more back then, not really. Because Marcus had just asked me for $8,000 to invest in a friend's restaurant venture, and when I told him I simply didn't have it, he looked at me across this same kitchen table and said, my garage project was never going to be worth a dime anyway, so what exactly was I even saving it for? I remember precisely where I was standing when he said that. Right by the stove, dish towel still in my hand. I didn't argue with him. I just went quiet, finished the dishes, and drove to my attorney's office that same week and had the trust drawn up before I could talk myself out of it. Diane found out 2 months later when Walter mentioned it in passing, thinking she already knew, and she told me I'd humiliated Marcus by not trusting him with the family's future. I told her I wasn't punishing anybody. I was just finally being honest, on paper, about who had actually shown a shred of real interest in the work. She didn't speak to me for the better part of a week after that. Then life did what life does, and it moved on, and everyone mostly forgot the trust even existed, including, if I'm honest, me most days. 11 years passed like that. The plant closed its remaining lines. I aged in ways I didn't expect. Slower joints, a back that complained in weather. Diane's patience for me thinned out further with every passing year, and somewhere along the way she stopped even bothering to hide her disappointment at dinner parties in front of other people. Then last spring, my hands started shaking too badly to hold a soldering iron steady for more than a minute at a time, and Renee drove me to a neurologist in Tyler without telling Diane why, because she said, correctly, that her mother would only make it about something else. Early stage tremor, the doctor said. Treatable, manageable, but not free, and definitely not covered the way our insurance had always promised it would be on paper. $1,400 just for the first full round of testing, with more likely to follow depending on what they found. I called Marcus first, because that's still what a father does, even after everything, even when some quiet part of you already knows how it's going to go. He was at a work happy hour when he picked up. I could hear the bar noise behind his voice, glasses clinking, somebody laughing too loud at something. "Dad," he said, "I just closed on a new car this afternoon. Can this wait a few weeks?" I told him it really couldn't, not with testing scheduled. He sighed, long and put upon, like I'd asked him to donate a kidney instead of help with a medical bill. "You always need something," he said. Then, quieter, meaner, in a tone I hadn't heard from him before. "Maybe it's time you finally sold off some of that garage equipment instead of hoarding it for some project that's never going anywhere. Might solve two problems at once." Diane's response, when I brought it up that evening, was somehow worse. "Go ask Renee," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "She's the one you've always trusted more with everything anyway, so let her handle it." Renee paid for the testing without a single word of complaint, without one moment of hesitation that I could see. Drove me to every appointment on her Saturday mornings, the one day she actually had to herself. Sat in waiting rooms grading a stack of essays balanced on her knee so she wouldn't fall behind for Monday. Never once brought the money back up afterward, never once made me feel the weight of it. 6 weeks after that first neurologist appointment, a letter arrived at my house from an agricultural manufacturing company based out of Iowa. They'd apparently been quietly testing corrosion-resistant valve designs for a new licensing partnership for the better part of a year, and my old 2003 patent had surfaced in their search as the cleanest, most cost-effective design still on record anywhere in the industry. They wanted to license it outright. The offer on the table was $11 million, plus royalties on every single unit produced over the following 15 years. I sat alone at my kitchen table and read that letter 4 separate times, certain I was misunderstanding something. Then I called the one man who still had every document from that trust filing 11 years earlier, my old attorney, Walter Higgins. "Walter," I said, "I need you to confirm something for me before I let myself believe any of this. Read me exactly what that trust says. Word for word, don't summarize it." He read it back to me slowly. "The patent and all associated licensing revenue belongs solely and irrevocably to Renee Ellen Whitfield. No exceptions clause, no reversal provision. Filed and notarized in 2003, untouched since. Marcus's name wasn't anywhere on that document. Diane's wasn't either. It never had been, not for one single day in 11 years. I didn't call Diane that afternoon. I didn't call Marcus either. Why would I, when 11 years earlier both of them had already told me plainly in their own words exactly whose name actually deserved to be on it? I asked Walter to finalize the licensing deal quietly, entirely in Renee's name, with every dollar flowing straight into an account only she controlled, no exceptions. I personally paid off her house through a separate gift, set up a standing medical fund for her costs and mine going forward. I didn't move a single dollar into anything with my own name on it. Some things you don't do for the credit. You do them because 11 years ago one child showed up when it mattered and one child didn't, and the paperwork was simply, finally, catching up to a truth that had been sitting there the whole time. Marcus found out 3 weeks later, not from me, but from a routine business registry alert on a licensing filing he happened to be tracking for his own firm. He showed up at my house that Thursday evening, still in his work clothes, tie loosened, sweat on his collar despite the air conditioning, demanding to know why I hadn't told him the moment the offer came through. I told him the plain truth, because the last time I asked you for something, you told me to sell my equipment instead. He didn't have an answer ready for that one. Diane, standing behind him in the doorway, didn't have one either. I'm not angry anymore, telling you all this now. I'm just clear in a way I never managed to be during 22 years standing alone in that garage. The people who actually show up when you have nothing left to give them, those are the ones who end up with the paperwork in their name. Everybody else just gets the truth eventually, whether or not they're ready to hear it. If this one landed for you the way it landed for me writing it out, tell me where you're watching from down.